Good evening. It's exactly 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and it's past the hour of 8 Cairo local time, and it's time for a new edition of Panorama News. I'm Dina Hussein with the political segment and the headlines in a moment, so stay with us. President Al-Sisi pardons jailed 82 youths. Syria rebels say 25 dead in car bombing. Iraq forces move on 2 airports in Mosul battle. President Al-Sisi issued a presidential decree number 515 for the year 2016 to pardon 82 detained youth, including Islamic thinker Islam al-Bahiri. The presidential media office reported that most of those being pardoned were university students and came after consulting the cabinet. The pardon depends on item 105 of the Constitution, which gives the president the right to pardon detainees who have final rulings against them. Nashwa al-Houfi, member of the panel that recommended prisoners for the pardon, said the focus was on university youth. President Al-Sisi also pledged that the government would look into revising a protest law that bans all but police-sanctioned demonstrations. Al-Sisi pardoned 100 people in September 2015, including 2 journalists and several prominent dissidents. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry held a phone call with his American counterpart John Kerry. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said Shoukry expressed Egypt's appreciation to the US role in supporting the economic reform plan being presented recently to the International Monetary Fund. During their telephone conversation, the 2 top diplomats tackled the recent developments in Syria, Libya and Yemen. The Secretary of State informed Shoukry on the outcome of his visit to Amman and his negotiations with different parties in Yemen. Authorities ordered the opening of Rafah border crossing on Thursday for the 4th consecutive day. The crossing will remain open till Friday in both directions for humanitarian cases. 25 Syrian rebels and civilians were killed in a car bomb attack targeting Syrian rebels in the province of Aleppo. A senior official of the Nuruddin al-Zinki group said the attack in the town of Azaz bore the hallmarks of Daesh terrorist group. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the bombing targeted on arms depot of Nuruddin al-Zinki, killing 10 and injuring dozens of other people. Meanwhile, the Russian military said that the airstrike on Idlib in Syria this week had killed at least 30 members of an Al-Qaeda-linked group, including some of its leaders. Iraqi forces have broken into Mosul and recaptured neighborhoods inside the city, but a month into their offensive, there are still weeks or more of heavy fighting ahead. The details.
Iraqi forces piled pressure on the Daesh terrorist group around Mosul on Thursday, moving closer to cutting off the terrorists' escape route west of Syria and thrusting deeper into the east of the city. Pro-government paramilitaries advancing on the town of Tal Afar, which commands the city's west approaches, entered its airport, while troops moving up from the south had the Mosul airport in their sights. Wounded civilians continued to stream out of the east of the Mosul as government forces battled Daesh terrorists on the streets. Hashd al-Shabi paramilitaries allied to the government were battling Daesh terrorists and looking for traps inside Tal Afar airport, the last major objective before the town itself. Control of Tal Afar, about 50 kilometers from Mosul, would bring pro-government forces closer to surrounding Daesh in its last major Iraqi stronghold. The city would be cut off from Daesh-controlled territory in Syria, where its de facto capital, Raqqa, is also in the sights of the US-backed forces. South of Mosul, advancing troops were nearing the city's airport. An officer with the elite Interior Ministry forces said a planned advance on Thursday would bring them to within 4 kilometers from the airport. Entire Daesh fighters were also within striking distance of Mosul's northern eastern neighborhoods, while in the east elite counter-terrorism forces and army troops punishing from two directions, were expected to join up despite stiff resistance. That would tighten their grip on the east of the city, although much tough fighting could still lie ahead when they cross the Tigris River and take on Daesh in the narrow streets of the old city on its west bank.
Yemeni government forces expelled rebels from several districts in the city of Taiz on Thursday. Dozens were killed and wounded as airstrikes resumed on other front lines, including in the province of Ma'rib, outside the Sana'a and Houthi stronghold of Sa'ida. Amid more clashes, Houthi rebels confirmed their endorsement of a ceasefire deal previously announced by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch accused Yemeni rebels of detaining, torturing, and disappearing opponents since they overran the capital in September 2014. The group said it had documented 2 deaths in custody and 11 cases of torture, one of a child. The U.S. Embassy in Jordan disputed Amman's claim that U.S. trainers sparked a deadly shooting incident at a Jordanian military base this month by disobeying orders from Jordanian soldiers. A U.S. Embassy spokesman said U.S. investigators were considering all possible motives and had not yet ruled out terrorism. The shooting killed 3 Americans who were assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group airborne from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and who were in Jordan on a training mission. The trio died after the convoy they were in came under fire as it entered the Al Jafar air base in southern Jordan on November 4th. And Turkish police detained the pro-Kurdish co-mayor of the city of Van, expanding a crackdown on municipal chiefs throughout the region that has sparked international concern. The details.
Turkey detained on Thursday Bekir Kaya, the pro-Kurdish co-mayor of the southeastern city of Van. Kaya was taken into custody as part of a terror investigation, saying he was accused of links to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK. Police used tear gas and water cannon outside the municipality to disperse dozens of protesters backing the detained mayor. 4 other municipal officials in the city, which has a mixed Kurdish and Turkish population, were also detained. The co-chair of the pro-Kurdish Democratic Regions Party, the DBP, a sister party to the HDP, was detained on Thursday. The targeting of the city heads follows the arrest of the 10 MPs from the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, the HDP, including its co-leaders, who are being held on charges of links to the PKK. On Wednesday, mayors in the southeastern city of Sirte and the eastern city of Tunceli were detained following similar accusations of links to the PKK. And last month, the 2 mayors of the mainly Kurdish city of Diyarbakir, Goltan Kisanak and Firat Anli, were detained and charged with belonging to the PKK. The Turkish Interior Ministry said in a statement that government-appointed trustees had been named to replace all the detained mayors. Turkey has also arrested 2 Czech nationals on suspicion of fighting for the Syrian Kurdish People's Protection Units, the as a terror group by Ankara, but an ally by Washington. EU and US officials have expressed concern over the arrest of opposition lawmakers as fears grow over Turkey's use of emergency laws.
And Amnesty International said Pakistan's decision to deport dozens of Turkish teachers were politically motivated and would only hurt Pakistan's children. Around 200 parents and students voiced outrage at the decision during the demonstration of Islamabad calling for justice. Several hundred students in Islamabad, Lahore and Karachi demonstrated against the decision, which was also condemned by Pakistani press after it was made public as Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived for a 2-day visit. Erdogan praised a move at a press conference with Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and during a later address in Parliament. Sudan welcomed Russia's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court, the ICC. A spokesman for Sudan's foreign ministry said Russian gesture gives strong support to the African position against the ICC, describing the court as a total failure. He expressed hope the departures of South Africa, Burundi and Gambia from the ICC and Russian President Vladimir Putin's gesture would prompt others to withdraw. 3 African nations announced plans to withdraw when Russia, which is not an ICC member, snubbed the ICC with Putin signing a symbolic decree to withdraw from the court. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte also said he might follow Russia and withdraw from the ICC. And DR Congo's President Joseph Kabila named an opposition lawmaker as prime minister following a controversial deal that was struck between the government and some opposition groups. During a speech to the parliamentarians in the capital Kinshasa, Kabila said the deal currently represents the only roadmap but in place by the Congolese themselves. He said he was ready to defend against any attempt to take over the country by force, pledging that elections would be organized in coming months. According to a presidential decree, Sami Badibanga will be the country's next prime minister. Badibanga is the leader of the main opposition bloc in the parliament. And US President-elect Donald Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, said she expects initial announcements of cabinet choices could come either before or after Thanksgiving. She said it's Trump alone who makes the ultimate decisions, adding that her boss was prepared for the weight of the presidency. On Thursday, Trump meets with more candidates for top White House positions in New York as new names had emerged as potential cabinet picks. He is scheduled to spend the day in his Manhattan headquarters, where he will meet a stream of potential new hires, as well as former Republican Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Meanwhile, U.S. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper submitted his resignation. And Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said that he wants to build a relationship of trust when he meets U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, stressing that the two-way alliance is the core of Tokyo's diplomacy and security. Abe, set to meet Trump later on Thursday in New York, is expected to be the first foreign leader to do so since the real estate magnate won a victory in the U.S. elections on November 8th. Speaking to reporters before leaving Tokyo, Abe called the U.S.-Japan alliance the cornerstone of Japan's diplomacy and security. Abe advisor, the Japanese premier, said that the Japanese premier would talk about the importance of the Japan-U.S. alliance. And meeting one last time his peers on the world stage, U.S. President Barack Obama and German Chancellor Angela Merkel reaffirmed a message of solidarity and transatlantic cooperation between top leaders, trading partners, and key NATO allies. Speaking at a joint news conference with Obama in Berlin, Merkel said she hopes to work closely with the new president when Donald Trump takes office next year. Making his sixth and final visit as president to Germany, Obama was accompanied by his national security advisor, Susan Rice. Meanwhile, the Kremlin accused Obama's administration of trying to damage relations with Russia to a degree that would make rebuilding them in the future a challenge. The lawyer of Jean-Marie Le Pen, the founder of France's far-right National Front Party, said that a court outside Paris had ruled in favor of his client in letting him remain honorary president, although it rejected his request to remain a card-carrying party member. Meanwhile, a survey showed former Prime Minister Alain Juppé favorite to become the next president, winning the party primary by a comfortable margin against ex-President Nicolas Sarkozy. The details.
A survey showed on Thursday that either former Prime Minister Alain Juppé or ex-President Nicolas Sarkozy, both old fox of French politics, will win the Conservative Party's ticket to run for president next year, with Juppé holding the lead. An internet-based survey of more than 18,000 voters showed Juppé 71 favorite to become the next president, winning the party primary by a comfortable margin against Sarkozy, his closest rival. Most other surveys, some based on much narrower samples of voters, have also shown him a clean winner there. François Fillon, another ex-prime minister whose potential score has risen 10 points in just 1 month, remained a threat, albeit still remote, to the frontrunners. The poll showed him scoring 22%, which he would need to largely improve on to make the runoff at one of his rivals' expense. Juppé is also favored to win the presidential election itself next May in a likely second-round runoff against far-right National Front leader Marine Le Pen. Meanwhile, French Prime Minister Manuel Valls warned that far-right leader Marine Le Pen had a chance of winning next year's presidential elections. There is growing concern in France that the wave of populist anti-globalization anger could hand Le Pen the keys to the Élysée Palace. Valls is suspected of having presidential ambitions himself, but has yet to officially throw his hat in the ring to go up against his party's deeply unpopular head of state, François Hollande. The French will hold the first-round vote in April for a president who enjoys even greater executive powers than the U.S. commander-in-chief, including the authority to send the country to war without parliamentary approval. Polls currently show Le Pen making it past the first round to the May 7th runoff, where she is expected to face off against a conservative candidate from the center-right. Valls pleaded for a new approach to globalization to respond to the kind of anger that led to the Brexit decision and the U.S. election results.
And South Korean President Park Geun-hye, a lawyer, said that she would not be able to appear before prosecutors until next week, despite their demand to question her sooner over a political scandal. The details.
North Korea's parliament on Thursday approved a bill to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate a scandal engulfing President Park Geun-hye, sharply raising political pressure on her amid calls for her to step down. Under the agreement, opposition parties will recommend a special prosecutor to lead the council, which will consist of more than 60 prosecutors and investigators. The team will be given 120 days to look into allegations against Choi and the presidential aides mired in the scandal. However, Park's lawyer said that she would not be ready to appear before prosecutors until next week, despite their demand to question her sooner over the snowballing political scandal. Park's lawyer said the president was willing to cooperate in the investigation, but said she needed more time. Park, who would be the first sitting president to be interrogated in a criminal case, has seen her approval ratings plunge in recent weeks, with hundreds of thousands of protesters taking to Seoul streets on Saturday demanding her resignation. The scandal centers on Park's shadow confidant Choi Soon-sil, who is accused of using her ties with the president to coerce local firms to donate millions of dollars to non-profit foundations that she then used for personal gain. Prosecutors have said they need to question Park by Friday at the latest as part of their investigation into the case.
Back home, Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square commemorated the 114th anniversary on Thursday. The museum held a gala ceremony in its garden marking the occasion. Director General of the museum, Sabah Abdel Razik, said an exhibition was inaugurated by Antiquities Minister Khalid Al-Hanani. The exhibition includes a collection of 9 artifacts from discoveries of the late Egyptologist Salim Hassan during his excavation works in Giza and Saqqara necropolis. Starting this week, the museum will be open late into the evening every Thursday and Sunday. In addition to its normal opening hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., the museum will now be open from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. On those 2 days. The museum, which was built in 1902, is home to 150,000 of Egypt's most important artifacts from a long and unique span of Egypt's history. And we'll have to end it here with the political segment. Now over to Ahmed Nader, and as usual, the business news. Good evening, Ahmed.
Good evening, Dina. Thank you very much. And we start straight away as the Egyptian stock market ended the Thursday session with a collective rise, gaining £8.2 billion. The benchmark index, EGX 30, increased by 2.4%, while the broader index, EGX 100, added 1.5%. The value of the market capital hit 544.104 billion Egyptian pounds. Battered bonds and emerging market currencies enjoyed some respite as the dollar took a breather from the post-American election charge that has taken it to a 13.5-year high. The dollar's top against the other top world currencies was a modest 0.3%, but marked a change of direction after 8 days of gains that have seen it jump almost 4%. The Brent crude jumped 80 cents to $47.40 a barrel, and the American light crude was up 75 cents at $46.32 a barrel. London and Paris share prices were moderately higher while the Frankfurt shunted downward. Also, the gold inched up 0.2% to $1,228 an ounce, moving further away from the low of $1,211.08 set on Monday. The energy minister for the top OPEC exporter, Saudi Arabia, said that he was optimistic about the OPEC deal to limit the oil output and mentioned the lower end of the agreed production target, helping spur a rally in the price of crude. Saudi Energy Minister Khalid Al-Falih said that the oil market was on a path towards becoming balanced and that reaching a decision to activate that ceiling of 32.5 million barrels a day will speed up the market recovery and benefit the producers and the consumers. OPEC agreed to limit the supply to between 32.5 million and 33 million barrels a day, with the special conditions given to Libya, Nigeria and Iran, whose output has been hit by wars or sanctions. At least 11 OPEC members will meet in Doha on Friday for an informal and consultative meeting. After the conclusion of a meeting of the major gas exporting countries in Doha, the Qatari Energy Minister Mohammed Saleh Al Saada said that the OPEC members would convene in the Qatari capital, adding that 11 countries had agreed to attend. The meeting is likely to focus on the deal to limit the oil production. Meanwhile, the American Labor Department said that the Consumer Price Index rose 0.4% last month, the most since April, and up from an 0.3% increase in September. The details follow.
Prospects for a rate hike next month also got a boost from other data on Thursday, showing first-time applications for unemployment benefits stumbling to a 43-year low last week and housing starts surging to a 9-year high in October. The reports painted an upbeat picture of the economy early in the fourth quarter and came as Fed Chair Janet Yellen said the U.S. Central Bank could release borrowing costs relatively soon. The U.S. State Labor Department said its consumer price index increased 0.4% last month after rising 0.3% in September. In the 12 months through October, the CPI advanced 1.6%, the biggest year-on-year increase since October 2014. The dollar paired losses against a basket of currencies after the data, which prices for longer-dated U.S. government bonds fell sharply. U.S. stocks index futures rose. In prepared remarks to lawmakers, Yellen said a rate hike would be appropriate if economic data kept pointing to an improving labor market and rising inflation. In another report, housing starts jumped 25.5% to a seasonally adjusted annual pace of 1.32 million units last month. Starts increased in all four regions last month. Single-family home building, which accounts for the largest share of the residential housing market, jumped 10.7% to an 869,000 unit pace in October, the highest in 9 years. Rising fuel prices drove over half of the overall CPI gain, up 7% for the month, after a 6% gain in September. Higher gas prices pushed U.S. consumer inflation up 0.4%. Despite low inflation, the Fed has hinted that it might resume raising U.S. interest rate at its next meeting on December 13th.
Meanwhile, in sports, the 9th round of the Egyptian Premier League continued on Thursday. Samoha fell in a 1-1 draw with Wadi Degla in the match, which was held at Burj Al Arab Stadium. With this result, Wadi Degla raised the tally of it to 12 points in the 8th place, while Samoha raised its tally to 18 points in 4th place. Meanwhile, Al-Muqawwaloon Al-Arab beat MP 2-1 in the match, which was held at Petrosport Stadium. With this result, Al-Muqawwaloon Al-Arab raised its tally to 13 points in the 7th place, while MP stopped in 12th place with 10 points. In another match, Talaya Al-Gaish beat Al-Ittihad of Alexandria 2-1. Ahmed Eid Abdel Malik scored in the 94th minute to give his team the 3 points. With this result, Talaya Al-Gaish raised its tally to 16 points in 5th place, while Al-Ittihad of Alexandria stopped in 6th place with 13 points. And Brazil made it 6 wins out of 6 as goals from Gabriel Jesus and Renato Augusto handed them a 2-0 win over Peru to edge them over closer to World Cup qualification. Gabriel fired Brazil into the lead with an assured 57th minute finish. The 19-year-old then set up the Brazilian second for Augusto in the 78th minute. The victory leaves Brazil 4 points clear at the top of South America's world qualification standings. The Brazilians now have 27 points from 12 games. With 6 games still remaining, Brazil are all but certain of securing one of the 4 automatic spots for the 2018 finals in Russia. Thomas Muller admits having been surprised by the accusations and arrogance and disrespect of saying that the German 8-0 rout of San Marino had nothing to do with the professional sport. Alain Gasperoni, the San Marino National Olympic Committee's press officer, posted an open letter to Muller on Facebook, listing 10 reasons that the German trip for the 2018 World Cup qualifier was useful. Muller said that he was taken by Gasperoni's angry rant, which accused the Germans of thinking they could be winning by bullying San Marino, adding that he meant no disrespect. The 8-0 drubbing in heavy rain kept Germany top of the 2018 World Cup qualifying group with a perfect record of 4 wins, while San Marino, ranked 199 places below the Germans by FIFA, remained bottom. And the Murray and Novak Djokovic are careering towards a showdown to decide their battle for supremacy. And the Murray moved a step closer to the semi-finals of the ATP Tour Finals as the world number 1 wore down Kei Nishikori in a 6-7, 6-4, 6-4 victory that took over 3 hours. Murray was pushed to his limits by Nishikori in the longest Tour Finals match played in the event's 7 years at London's O2 Arena. But Murray finally subdued the Japanese star in 3 hours and 20 minutes. The 29-year-old's recovery took his winning streak to 21 matches, just one short of his career best run of 22 successive victories earlier this year. And Rory McIlroy struggled to a 75, and the other contenders to top the European money list also made slow starts in the season-ending DP World Tour Championship first round in Dubai. Lee Westwood led the field with an opening 66, but Henrik Stenson, who leads the money list, shot level par 72. The details follow.
Rory McIlroy struggled to a 75, and the other contenders to top the European money list also made slow starts in the season-ending DP World Tour Championship first round in Dubai on Thursday. Experienced Briton Lee Westwood led the field with an opening 66, but British Open champion Henrik Stenson, who leads the money list, shot level par 72, and his Swedish compatriot Alex Norin and Britain's US Masters winner Danny Willett had rounds of 71. World number 2 McIlroy, fourth on the money list, needs victory in Dubai to win the race, with Stenson finishing outside the top 45, Willett failing to make the first 5, and Norin the top 2. But the Northern Irishman had problems on the greens and made a double bogey and 4 bogeys to slump to a tie for 55th place in the 60-man field. Frenchman Julian Cousin and Belgian Nicolas Clostert were tied for a second behind Westwood after rounds of 67, one shot ahead of Spain's Sergio Garcia, Italian Francisco Molinari, and Dutchman Joost Luiten. France Julian Cousin and Belgium's Nicolas Colserets were tied for second place after 67th, while number 12 Spaniard Sergio Garcia was tied fourth after 68, along with Italian Francisco Molinari and Dutchman Joost Luiten. Stenson made just one birdie and one bogey, being denied a closing birdie on the 18th after his putt from 6 feet lipped out.
And this brings us to the end of the sporting segment of Panorama News, as well as the news bulletin itself. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.